Welcome to Community Chat. As you know, this particular program is a vehicle to provide information to you, whether it's regarding something that's going on in and around the community, or maybe it might be upcoming event, it could be political in nature. Today, as we know, right around the corner, we will have a slew of state races that we will have candidates in to talk about why they are running for their said office. Today, we are joined by Chris Dempsey. Chris is a Democratic candidate for state auditor, and he is here to join us to talk about his campaign and candidacy for this particular office. Chris, welcome to the program.
Kevin, it's so great to be on with you today.
You got a great voice.
Thank you.
You definitely do. First things first, for the folks who may or may not know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Chris Dempsey. I'm running for Massachusetts State Auditor. I'm the son of public school teachers. They met while teaching at the Martin Luther King School in Boston in 1970, and they were placed in adjoining classrooms, and it was love at first sight. At least that's my dad's version of the story. My mom isn't so sure it was love at first sight, but eventually she came around, and I was the result of that happy marriage, along with my little sister Allison, who is also a public school teacher, along with her wife in New York City in the New York City public schools. So I grew up in a family where we talked a lot about the importance of public investment and the need to make good decisions with our public policy at the local, state, and federal level. I had the privilege of serving as Assistant Secretary of Transportation for Governor Deval Patrick in the first term of that administration. While I was there, I co-founded the MassDOT program that created all the smartphone apps that tell you when your bus or train is going to arrive. It's really transformed the way that people use transit, especially the commuter rail system. I went off into the private sector and spent time there, and I've also worked at the nonprofit level. One thing I did outside of government, but I think reflects on the values I place in government, is I co-founded a group called No Boston Olympics back in 2014. And people may remember there was a $15 billion proposal to bring the Olympics to Boston, but it was going to require state taxpayers to sign a guarantee to cover 100% of the Olympic cost overruns, which would have totaled billions and billions of dollars. And I felt that that was not the right priority for our Commonwealth. So it's experiences like that that lead me to run for auditor. It's a job that's all about making state government work better and standing up to protect taxpayers. I've done that before, and I want to do it again.
What's your experience as to holding municipal office or state office? Again, you talked about your role in transportation. Have you been appointed to other committees and boards within your local community?
Yeah, so at the state level, I served as Assistant Secretary of Transportation,
right, I get that.
As I mentioned. At the local level, I've been very involved in my home community of Brookline. I've been a town meeting member, which is elected in Brookline since 2012. I've also been the chair of the Brookline Transportation Board. Now that means sitting through a lot of long public meetings with a lot of public comment, and I'm sure that your viewers are familiar with a lot of that local government action. But I think local government is incredibly important. And the role of state auditor has this important position with state government. It actually oversees an office called the Division of Local Mandates. And what that group does is it determines the financial impact of state law on local budgets. So if folks here in Abington care about their local budget and their tax rates and where their dollars are going, they need to care about the auditor's office, because we have real impact over what municipalities have to bear in terms of costs.
So what is the real appeal to running for state auditor? Was there ever a time that you decided to seek another constitutional office, or was this it?
This office is the focus of mine, and I've never thought about running for anything else. Admittedly, it's a little bit of an obscure office. Not every voter is that familiar with the role. But I'm a person that has worked in government, and I really like to roll up my sleeves and dig into the details of state government. That's what this role is. It's not about just electing another politician that has a lot of opinions about things. It's a role where you're really putting in the work to analyze state government, to understand it, and then to use the results of the reports of the office to advocate for changes to state government that make us all stronger as a Commonwealth and as communities. That's been the work of my life, and it's why I want to continue it in the Auditor's Office.
It wasn't too long ago that current Massachusetts State Auditor, Suzanne Bump, announced that she was not going to seek another term. So that means this is going to be an open seat, and usually open seats equal a crowded field. Mm-hmm. Any concerns about this being a crowded field, especially whether it's for the primary? Not so much, because it's you up against a Republican and maybe an unenrolled if you were able to get past primary day.
Well, let me start by addressing Auditor Bump, who's the incumbent, who's not running for re-election. You know, she has deep ties to this part of the state. She represented Braintree in the state legislature many years ago. She also has lived in Whitman and in Easton. And so she's someone that your viewers may know and may have heard of. I think she's done a fine job as state auditor. She's really professionalized the office and brought in some good people that have helped uncover important issues within state government. At the moment, there are only 2 candidates running in the Democratic primary, which is September of 2022. And so it's not a crowded field right now, but I do think that voters are going to have a clear choice in this election between 2 very different types of candidates. And we can talk more about that as the race goes on. I'm the only candidate in this race, though, that hasn't spent their career just on Beacon Hill. I've worked outside in the private sector, and someone that has delivered real results in state government. So both in and out of state government, I've had success. And that's what I'm bringing to the table in this race. We'll see what happens with the general election. As of today, and we're talking in mid-October of 2021, there is no announced Republican candidate. I'm sure there will be a Republican candidate by the time next year comes around, but right now our focus is on the Democratic primary in September of 2022.
Would you say getting out early and campaigning is a distinct advantage for anybody who is seeking to secure this office?
Yeah, I think voters don't want to just elect a politician that's looking for a stepping stone in their career. I think they want to elect someone who is committed to the particular work of this job and has a demonstrated track record of delivering results within state government. So we've been out very early on this campaign. In fact, within an hour of Auditor Bump announcing she was not running for re-election, we had put out a statement praising her decades in public service and saying that we would have more to say about the race. So I have real conviction about the importance of this office. Again, not the highest profile office in the land, not one that's necessarily on the tip of people's tongues, but I think this is a crucial role. And I know that as voters engage more with this race, I think they'll come to see that too, that this is a unique opportunity within state government to make it more responsible to taxpayers, to get better outcomes for these state programs that we care about, and really to reform state government. That's the kind of leader I am, and that's the kind of leadership I want to bring to the state auditor's office.
I think you've acknowledged during our brief conversation here that you've kind of followed and what Auditor Bump has brought to the table during her time in office. What are some of the things, some of the reports maybe that have been generated, or some of the things, the way that her office is run, that maybe you would seek to retain or maybe modify?
Yeah. She said in her statement about not running for re-election that she feels like she has accomplished a lot in the office, and I agree, but that she's also excited to see a new generation step into the role and try to expand on the work that she's done. And that's very much my approach here is, can we build the auditor's office into something even greater than it has been under Auditor Bump's leadership? I think one thing we can do is raise the profile of the office, because it's one of these offices that doesn't have a lot of direct opportunity to change state policy, but it achieves its results by working with the grassroots, working with the media, ultimately working with the legislature and the executive branch to really advocate for change. And so you need to be a good communicator in this job. You need to have a vision for where we need to go as a Commonwealth and really help the Commonwealth chart that direction on that future map. That's a skill set that I can bring, and I think I've demonstrated through grassroots efforts like No Boston Olympics that we can achieve a lot with a little. We got outspent on that campaign 1,500 to 1 They spent $15 million pushing the Olympic bid. We spent less than $10,000 on our side, but we were successful because we were good at communicating the downsides and risks of the bid. Now, you also asked about what she's brought to the office and what she's focused on. I think there's a lot we could point to there. I really appreciate that she's had a focus on some of the basic social safety net programs that really matter to people who are the recipients of those services. You look at something like Mass Health. About 1 in 5 Massachusetts residents are on the Mass Health program. Almost half of all children are on the Mass Health program. So this is a program that we need to have work for the people of the Commonwealth. It's the largest use of tax dollars in our operations budget. It really touches millions of lives every day. She's been focused on Mass Health, how to reform it, how to improve services there. Another example of that would be the Department of Children and Families. And we know that when DCF is not working for a child, it's the only thing that matters in their life. School doesn't matter, healthcare doesn't matter, their friends don't matter if that program and system is not working for them. So we have to keep an eagle eye on that, and that's the type of role that the auditor can play. You know, the auditor's office is not just about typical financial auditing, kind of traditional auditing that people might think of when they think of their taxes being audited. It's also about performance auditing. And it's also about changing the broader public conversation. So with performance auditing, you're looking into these executive branch agencies, and you're asking not just did the dollars go to the right place, but did we get the right outcomes for those dollars? Did we actually improve people's lives and make our communities stronger? And then the auditor has also weighed in on these broader public policy debates. Just last week, Auditor Bump put out a report on rural communities and the need to invest more in rural infrastructure. When she did that, she had headlines from the Boston Globe, Mass Live, Berkshire Eagle, newspapers and outlets across the state that covered that report and raised the profile of that issue in our state's political conversation and public policy conversation. That's the kind of auditor that I want to be.
So I have to ask you the $64 question, and that is what do you feel are the key issues in this particular race? And I'm not necessarily asking you to tip your hand because of other candidates who are out there and may want to seize upon a moment.
Sure.
But these are things that probably that have been raised to you as you're out there telling folks, hey, I'm a candidate for state auditor, and then bringing attention to it to you.
Well, we've been literally from Pittsfield to Provincetown and many places in between. We've spent a lot of time in Plymouth County just a few weeks ago. We made stops in Brockton and Middleborough and Plymouth and Pembroke, and we're back down here today and excited to be here today. The reaction that I'm getting from people, first, admittedly, sometimes people have basic questions about what the auditor's office is and what it does.
Right.
And so some of it is an educational effort to just share information about how important this office can be. But I think people are especially reacting positively to my experience both in the executive branch of state government as Assistant Secretary of Transportation, and also to my experience outside of state government. Whether that's with No Boston Olympics, whether that's with the nonprofit I ran called Transportation for Massachusetts, or my experience in the pure private sector, and I have spent some time in the private sector. That's unique in this race. My opponent has spent her entire career on Beacon Hill. And I think that voters want an elected official in this particular role, which is a little bit of a unique and specialized role, to be someone that has that breadth of experience and the relevant executive branch and management experience that you want for this job. When I've shared my background with people, they've reacted really positively to that. I think they've seen that I'm someone that likes to roll up his sleeves and get things done and make state government work better. That's what this job is. I'm a good fit for that, I think, based on my background, and we've been really delighted by the response we've had across Plymouth County and across the state.
So if you look at the different levels of whether it's just your regular voter who comes up to you, or somebody who might be a business owner, somebody who might be in local government, what are you hearing from them in regards to the auditor's race and some of their concerns, if any? Yeah,
no, look, it's you get every issue under the sun. So we're taping this at Abington High and High and Middle School, and you and I were discussing before the show the importance of the Mass School Building Authority. I had a question last night when I was talking with folks in the Berkshires about the Mass School Building Authority. And there's a perception there, and I think there's probably some truth to it, that the MSBA is not doing enough to ensure that new school buildings are low emission or zero emission or net zero buildings. As we think about the goals that we have for environment and climate, we think about the fact that we want to keep our air clean, especially our air around schools. We need to be thinking about how can we reduce air pollution. So that's a place where the state auditor can help the Mass School Building Authority think differently. That's an entity that provides hundreds of millions of dollars a year to communities to build beautiful school facilities like this. Let's make sure we get those dollars right. That would be one example. From business owners, I'm hearing about issues like the unemployment assistance program. You know, that really failed people in the height of the pandemic. Right as the pandemic was hitting, people were not able to receive the benefits that they deserved at the worst possible time because of a failure of management within state government. That's the kind of problem we want to find and fix before it happens, and that's the work of the state auditor. So it really can touch the people's lives in different ways and different state agencies and programs across the spectrum of the services and the platforms that state government provides. You want someone that has that breadth of knowledge and has seen, again, within state government, but also has the experience outside of state government, which I think is really relevant and needed more in state government.
How has it been campaigning in a somewhat post-pandemic world? Has it been easy or different? I mean, we're sitting here now as we're doing this interview, we're wearing masks because that's the requirement of us being housed within this building. What has it been like out and about campaigning as we are hopefully seeing the light at the end of the tunnel for COVID?
Well, I've really enjoyed getting to meet people across the Commonwealth, but it has been a challenge to do it in the era of the pandemic. Really glad to see that our case numbers are going down, our deaths are going down in Massachusetts. That's good news. I think we can't let up yet. We still have to be vigilant. And so we're doing everything we can to meet people, holding events outside when possible, holding virtual events and Zoom events. And I think people are pretty respectful of that. We know that we're all in this together. This is a pandemic, and it's a public health pandemic, and that means we all have to do our part to keep those numbers going down. We haven't let the pandemic get in the way of meeting people across the state. And as I said, we've been from Pittsfield to Provincetown. Now, we're going to stay on the trail and keep working hard, and maybe we don't shake hands and we just do a fist bump instead, or maybe we just say hello because that's the best practice at the time. Maybe we keep our masks on. That's all appropriate and the right thing to do in the right situation. And the most important thing is to have that opportunity to have a conversation with people, and we've been able to do that.
I want to ask you kind of a side question, and that's in regards to, you know, being a part of that no to having the Olympics here in 2024. And I followed that, and I did interviews with individuals, and it was astounding to me the folks actually wanted, knowing how congested the city of Boston is and what what we've endured, that they'd want to have the Olympics here. What was it like to hear the opposition, the folks who were like, oh no, we've got to do this, and being part of that conversation?
Well, it was really a important moment and opportunity for me. I look back on it as one of the most challenging things that I've done, but so glad that we did it. We needed to have some folks calling the question, so to speak, on that bid. That bid was being pushed by some of the most powerful people in Massachusetts. If you looked at Boston Magazine's list of the most powerful Bostonians, which they put out every year, 4 out of the top 5 most powerful Bostonians were working for that bid or supporting that bid. And as I think I mentioned earlier, we got outspent 1,500 to 1 on that campaign. So we were going up against some powerful interests in the interest of trying to protect the public and trying to protect taxpayers. You know, I've got nothing against the Olympics as a concept.
It's a great concept.
I love our Olympic athletes. I was 10 years old when the Dream Team played in Barcelona. You know, having those memories of watching them on TV are really special. The problem with the Olympics is the International Olympic Committee, which is an unelected group of mostly members of royalty from Europe who just want to have the cities wine and dine them and spend billions of dollars to put on their three-week sporting event, and then they just move on to the next city.
Right.
And we've all seen the images of the empty venues and the empty stadiums, and we've heard the stories and read the stories of these cities that are left with $10 or $15 billion of debt. Montreal, it took 20 years for them to pay off the debt from the Olympics for a 3-week sporting event. That's not fiscal responsibility and fiscal prudence. And I think Whether you're Democrat or Republican, whether you're conservative or you're progressive, you want your tax dollars spent well. And that was not going to be a good use of tax dollars. So I'm really proud to say that I led that effort with the help and support of so many people. You know, by the end of that campaign, Kevin, despite getting outspent 1,500 to 1, we had more individual citizen contributors to our campaign than Boston 2024 had to its campaign. The difference is our average contribution size was $100. Their average contribution size, was $100,000.
Wow, that's amazing.
Those are the types of folks that we were fighting in that battle. And I'm really proud that the people of Massachusetts made the right decision on that.
Bringing it back to the campaign, is there anything that I have not asked you during our conversation, a particular question, a frequently asked question that hasn't been raised here, but you want to take a moment to either touch upon it or even just reiterate anything that you've already kind of mentioned?
Yeah, let me talk about one idea that I think is a little bit unique and might help people understand the potential power of the auditor's office. So I care a lot about climate and the environment. We talked about that earlier. And even for folks who are not as focused on that issue, we know we're going to be spending billions of dollars on climate in the decades ahead. Let's spend those dollars correctly. So I will make the state auditor's office the first in the country to incorporate carbon accounting into our audits of relevant state agencies.
Wow.
And what that will do is allow us to hold the agencies accountable for reducing emissions in their areas of operations and regulation. That will make sure that MassDOT is reducing emissions from transportation. Make sure that the Department of Environmental Protection is reducing emissions from the regulated entities that it oversees. We will make Massachusetts, as I said, the first state auditor's office in the country to do that, but it will not be the last. Because once we start doing it here in Massachusetts, auditors across the country will start copying that approach, and that will help make us a leader on the environment and on climate, and I know that's an important issue to many voters here in Abington and across the state.
Final question for anybody who may be watching this particular conversation at this particular time. If they want to learn more about you, if they want to get involved in your campaign or get, regular updates, where can they go to get all that information?
We're running a grassroots campaign, and we'd love to have people be a part of the team. The best place to go is dempseyforauditor.com or on Facebook, facebook.com/dempseyforauditor. They can sign up for our emails there. They can let us know that they stopped by. They can read more about me and who I am and why I'm running for this office and what the office does. We'd be delighted to have them engage with us, and we look forward to meeting people in person in the weeks and months ahead.
Well, we thank you for coming down here to the studio to talk a little bit about your campaign, and as things start to heat up, maybe we can have you back in at the beginning of the year in 2022 and find out where the campaign trail has taken you.
We'd love to be back, Kevin. Thanks so much for the chance to join you and your viewers today.
You got it. And I want to thank you for tuning into programs like Community Chat. The idea of this program, again, is to better inform you and to bring you conversations as they're happening. So again, we thank you for tuning in. If you have an idea for a topic or something that you want to see on this program, info@abingtoncam.tv. And until our next conversation, have a great day.